Hello everyone, I am Buck WSR Weezer, and today we're looking at this tractor, a Yard Machines by MTD lawn tractor. All I know about this tractor is that it does not start despite having a new battery. This looks pretty good. This looks like it's been repainted at some point. Looks really good. It has the 20.5 horsepower opposed twin Briggs & Stratton engine. And we're going to see if we can figure out what's going on here today. Let's sit down and attempt to start it and see what we get. Nothing. Oh, nothing. Nary a thing. Now, the first thing I notice is the sticker on this battery is May of 2017. So he says despite having a new battery, this battery is actually over a year old. So maybe he means new, and as he put it in last year. First thing I'm going to do is see what kind of voltage reading we get on this quote-unquote new battery. Alright, so I have the tester out. Let's see what we get here. Not getting any reading on that. What's going on here? This battery's not showing any voltage whatsoever. Alright, I think what I'm going to do is start by removing this battery and then see if I can put a charger on it and see if we can trace exactly why this battery, just a year old, is reading absolutely no voltage. That sure doesn't make a lot of sense. We can remove this cover to gain access to some of the other electrical connections. Unscrew the shifter knob. A couple Phillips head screws. And that plate lifts off. So here we have our starter solenoid, some other wires. Alright, well here's the starter solenoid. Someone's been in here before doing something or other, because here's this wire that should bring 12 volts from the key switch. It's been spliced, and this yellow wire comes over here, and then this connector here is not original, but it's connected that yellow wire that goes to the starter solenoid here on the orange wire from the kill switch. So we've got some things going on, but for some reason or another that battery's become completely drained, and we're going to figure out why that is. Well, here is the here's that orange wire that originally went to the starter solenoid, but was cut for some whatever reason, and this new wire run. I don't have a reason to suspect that's the problem, but it's something to keep in mind. Work done previously always makes you a little suspect. This solenoid hangs upside down here, which is hard to access. So I'm going to take it off and see if I can flip it around and try to be able to work with it a little bit easier that way. It's just hard to deal with underneath. Also harder to show you what I'm doing. Alright, so I've released the starter solenoid to find something very curious. Both leads from the battery and to the starter are under the same terminal, and the other terminal is actually missing and broken. So why that had been done, and all right, you know, can't quite understand how that happened, but I think I need to start by getting this set up properly, because these two thick red leads, from this one coming from the battery and the other going to the starter motor, are not typically bolted under the same terminal, but on separate terminals. So this guy's broke, and I think the first thing we need to do is come up with a new starter solenoid. See if we can get this thing wired up properly. Okay, so here's the old solenoid and the new one, and I wanted to show it to you before I hook up the wires and put it on the tractor. See, the correct one has two posts. On one main lug we get the 12-volt feed from the battery. On the other side we put the 12-volt wire that goes to the starter motor. This here is where we connect the 12-volt wire that comes from the key switch. When 12 volts is applied here, connection is made between these two terminals, and electricity goes to your starter motor and turns the starter motor. You'll notice that this new one does not have the ground wire connection, and that's okay, because we're going to be grounded just by virtue of bolting up to the tractor frame. So that's how a solenoid is supposed to work and look, and I wanted to show it to you before I installed it on the tractor, since the tractor has it hanging upside down and you really can't see much. So let's go ahead now, make those connections, see what we got. So the new solenoid is in place, and made the connections here. Here's the 12-volt wire from the key switch, and now we're going to connect the battery back here. I spent some time charging this battery. It was completely dead. For the last couple of days it's been hovering around 12.1 volts. I don't know if it's going to hold its charge over the long haul, but we'll give it a shot. Well, let's jump on it and see what happens. Not sure this battery's going to have the muscle to get it done, but let's see. Nothing. Nothing. Alright, so clearly we still have another issue to resolve. I removed the key switch, and I want to test that here in a little bit. But right now with my multimeter, I'm trying to make sure we actually have 12 volts coming to the key switch, and that would be coming in on this red wire here. So the one end of the tester is going to ground, and this should read 12 volts. Okay, which it does right there. So we have the 12 volts from the battery coming to the switch. Now I should be able to jump that to this orange/yellow wire, which would take voltage down to our starter solenoid. So let me see if I can jump that and get anything to happen. I'm just going to use this jumper to kind of try to bridge these 2 points. Alright, so you're getting something there. So the wiring's correct. Maybe that key switch is bad. Also, it does not seem like the battery's going to have enough juice to turn this baby. You could hear the starter whine and spin, but not engage the yeah. So we'll have to deal with that problem too. I've added a second battery by way of a pair of jumper cables. I don't know if that's going to help us or not, but let's give that a try and jump that switch again and see what happens. A little bit better there. That started to feel a little more energized to happen. A little bit more. So I think the battery's kind of toast. Probably need to upgrade the battery, and that's going to be an important part of what we're doing here. So I'm going to try to jump start it with the car, and just see if having a strong battery is what we need to get this going. Well, you could feel the load on the car when I connected that. Just making me wonder if we got a compression issue going on with this engine. I've pulled out the spark plugs. I want to see if the starter will turn the motor now. With the spark plugs out, of course, there's no compression. It should be able to spin easily. Which, of course, it does. So I'm thinking, well, we at least have our solenoid working, hooked up to a strong battery with the car, and the starter motor works. So I'm wondering if there's an issue with the compression on this engine. It's just making it too difficult for the starter motor to turn it over. Well, this is what I've decided to do. I'm going to replace this battery. I don't think it's adequate any longer, having been discharged so completely. Also, I believe it's probably a little bit undersized for this particular Briggs & Stratton engine at 230 cca. We're going to get a bigger battery to put in here. I've already replaced the starter solenoid here, and now I'm also going to replace this starter. I think it just doesn't have the muscle anymore. It's weak. Even when we were jumping the battery with the automobile, and even applying 12 volts directly to the terminal of the starter. So we're going to go ahead and replace this starter. So I'm going to show you how to do that. We're going to remove this metal housing, this red cover, with these 3/8" bolts. Some are 5/16. We'll disconnect the battery and the positive cable from the base of the starter here. And this cover comes off with the 3/8 bolts, 5/16 here at the oil dipstick, and I think that will give us access to what we need to do to remove the starter. Now, here's the starter. One of the reasons this starter is a little bit of a pain to replace is it's held down with 2 bolts here at the top, one, and the other is down under here, under the flywheel. That's really hard to get to. Pretty much have to remove the flywheel. So I'm going to show you how to do that right now. Alright, this dust cover is held on with these 1, 2, 3, 4 screws, and it takes a T15 bit to remove them. Loosen them up, and we'll grab the nut driver. One of the difficulties in removing a flywheel is finding a socket big enough for that nut. It's actually 1.25 inches, and I was lucky enough to have a socket that size. I've got an impact. This may be just too much for it to handle, but let's give it a try. Hey, gotta like that. Love it. Now we'll take off the plastic fan. Alright. And we're left with a flywheel. I might have a Briggs & Stratton flywheel puller. Let me go look for that. This here is the Briggs & Stratton flywheel puller. I haven't used this in a while. It's set up like this with the 2 bolts, nut above the main part and then one below it. And we are going to set it on top of the flywheel, put the nut back in right about flush where it meets the top of the shaft. And we're going to thread these into the threaded holes here in the top of the flywheel. And I think I'm just going to give it a little bit of a WD-40 right there. And you just take them in as far as they'll go, 1/2 inch or whatever. And then tighten these nuts down at the top where it meets there. Snug them down a little bit. Okay, so then this nut, these 2 nuts here, we will tighten gradually, and that will be pulling up on the flywheel as it pulls down on this tool. Give them a little WD-40 while we're at it, and that should pop the flywheel free from the crankshaft. Usually it's pretty obvious when it pops loose. That was the pop. I think we did it. So now loosen the whole contraption. Should be able to pull it off now fairly easily. Okay, so when you remove the flywheel, make sure you I had it. Make sure you keep track of this key. This guy right there, because we'll need that for the reinstall. Now we got access to that other starter bolt. Now we can get to these bolts. Loosening is a better idea. Okay, I've already disconnected the positive cable down there. These 2 come out, and there's the starter. So I think an upgrade would be in order. He spins, but can't handle much of a load, unfortunately. And that's the main reason we're going to go ahead and change this guy out. So when you're looking up the part, the step for your starter for your motor, you'll need this information that's here on the engine cover. Model 461777. Then the type is 0137E1, and the code 9802175A. So check the model, type, and code on your machine so you can get the correct part. Okay, here's the new starter. Installation is as easy as those two bolts. Those two bolts, and then connect the cable. I was thinking, I feel like in the past on one of these same engines, I had actually replaced the starter while leaving the flywheel in place, and getting that guy out and in, while not impossible, was so close to impossible. And this time I decided, let's just take the flywheel off. Alright, so connect the cable. And that should be a 7/16 wrench. If I had a thin wrench, I could stick it in here. This one's too thick, so I'm just going to try to hold this inner nut with a pair of needle nose pliers and tighten this guy down. And that's it. Now I'll put the flywheel back on. Okay, so we'll try to line up the groove in the flywheel slot here, crankshaft. And into that groove, we'll put the soft metal flywheel key. And that will hold the flywheel properly aligned while we torque it down. Washer and the nut. And I'm going to torque this down in the same manner with which I torqued it off with this little impact. It may not have enough muscle as I would otherwise like, but it's what I have for the time being. Alright, I'm gonna go with that. Need the fan. Got to have the fan. I think that's better. Okay, next we put the screen in place. Trying to get these to line up right. All right. Now I think this has to go on here somewhere, doesn't it? Where was this guy? Is he back here? He was back there. And these wires must have been held right here. It's all just a jigsaw puzzle. And if you like jigsaw puzzles, you like doing this. Actually, I don't like jigsaw puzzles because not as practical. You know what I'm saying? Okay, yeah, that cover's back on. Next we will secure the dipstick right there. And we're about back together. And almost about time to give this thing a whirl. Well, we're pretty much back together here. All I need is the cover on that air cleaner. And then we'll sit down in the driver's seat, see if this thing's gonna cooperate with us with that new starter, new battery, and hopefully we'll be good to go. Okay, here we go. Hey, that makes me really happy. We did it. Yes, we did it. So we put the new starter on, new battery, and problem solved. It starts up. That engine sounds really good. I'll probably do a look over on this tractor, change the oil while we're here. Maybe some new spark plugs. And we'll be ready to go. So I am Buck WSR Weezer. I want to thank you for joining me on this project. I'm so glad it turned out successfully. And yeah, we're all back in business. Thanks for watching.